Hello and welcome to SKB Shots. నాదో లెజెండరీ జాన్ డైక్స్ ఉన్నారు. ఆయన చాలా షోస్ ప్రెజెంట్ చేశారు. ఫుట్బాల్ కానివ్వండి, క్రికెట్ కానివ్వండి, వరల్డ్ కప్స్ ప్రెజెంట్ చేశారు ఆయన. అండ్ ఇప్పుడు యూఎఫ్ఐ ఛాంపియన్స్ లీగ్ ఫైనల్ గురించి మేమందరం కూడా సోనీ నెట్వర్క్ లో ఉన్నాం కామెంటరీ చేయడానికి, ఆయన ప్రెజెంట్ చేయడానికి. ఆయనతో చాలా విషయాలు మాట్లాడదాం. సో ఐ జస్ట్ ఇంట్రడ్యూసింగ్ యూ ఇన్ తెలుగు.
Yeah, I heard one word, which was legendary.
Yeah.
Right?
So, John, you have been doing many shows. And when was the first time, that came to you that, you should be doing presenting, you should be there in sports?
That's a very interesting question. I'll try and keep the answer short. When I first started out, I was a journalist. I used to write sports. And then I kind of moved into entertainment journalism and lifestyle journalism. And funnily enough, my first TV presenting experience was talking about entertainment. I did a movie show. And initially I was reluctant to do it because I felt that it just wasn't suitable for me. I like writing. But then they convinced me to do it. And then kind of naturally, I made my way back to sport because it was always my first love. And then I quite comfortably found myself sitting talking about sport. And I found it more natural to talk about sport than about other things.
I mean, you were pushed into doing something, but again, you came back to sports and in a way it worked for you, right?
Yeah, very much so, because I think ultimately, you hear this a lot, but if you follow your passion, you tend to be more invested in doing the research, doing the work, having the passion for it yourself that makes you more authentic. So I think if you are writing or talking about anything and it's something that you're passionate about, you will be better, I think, at it.
Right. John, you have seen the evolution of different media coming into picture. Initially it was radio, now we have TV and digital coexisting together. And then for a point of time, there was only TV. How do you see this evolution of different media coming into picture?
Well, it's a huge topic to get into, but I think what we've obviously seen is a difference in the way that people consume content, but it's not drastically different. And I think there are some assumptions made these days that the young people, for example, only want 15-second TikTok scrolls and what have you. Now, I absolutely love the evolution of this short form content, particularly user generated content. I think there are some really cool people out there making some fun content. But I also know, and I know this because I have daughters who are 22 and 18 years old, and I've watched how they consume content, that they still love long form content. So there is still a huge appetite for well crafted, well made, well delivered longer form content. So I don't like it when media organizations cut their budgets or change their programming and they use the justification saying, oh, people don't watch that anymore. I think that's maybe a bit of a cop-out. And I think what that might be a product of is market forces. So I think obviously whether there's still advertising, whether there are still subscriptions to be made, that impacts decisions. But I don't like it when people say people don't want to watch well-produced content anymore, because I dispute that. I think it's still a place for it.
And also, there is a talk that the newspapers are dying and the website articles are also not that effective. But when it comes to sports, everybody wants to read everything. Everybody wants to watch everything, on TV, on newspaper, on digital, on radio, whatever the content is.
Yeah. The interesting thing, of course, is that in life, we've seen this happen, whether it be moving from taxis to kind of ride-sharing schemes, moving from hotels to, sort of public-driven things like Airbnb. Right. It's most obviously affected the media, where we have this now democratization, if you will, and in some ways that's good because it allows people to have a voice and it allows people to have a platform on which they can put out their thoughts, what have you. But remember that the journalists in particular had to go through training. You have to be fairly rigorous in terms of fact-checking, in terms of verification, in terms of understanding the laws of defamation and libel. And I think one of the slight problems now that exist in the media is it's very tempting to say, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to consume this content, but it's very unfiltered content. And therefore, it's a little bit dangerous. So I think there's still a role, and I think we'll see it more and more now. There's increasingly a role for credible, authentic media.
Right. And then now, sport always unites all the diversities. When it comes to football or cricket, you have people from different areas coming together and playing for their clubs, different states coming and playing for their country and all of those things. And now you're in India, which is actually, a trademark of unity and diversity. And you can see a lot of languages coming, a lot of cultures coming in. So how do you like being in India?
I love it. India's been a huge part of my professional life for many, many years, because when I first started out in sport, I was working for a broadcaster that broadcast to India and the Indian subcontinent. So obviously, I've always had a large audience here. And what was interesting with the evolution of social media, the fact that I was able to engage with viewers, with fans, a lot of fans said, oh, well, I grew up watching you, or you were the first person I saw that produced serious, comprehensive coverage, not just football. I did cricket, of course, when I first started out. And what I'm loving right now is the fact that I'm engaging with the Indian market, and I'm seeing that there is such a sophisticated audience in terms of sports, a very sports literate audience out there, but they're being served in so many different languages. And I think that's fantastic. And I think what we've seen is this evolution of this multi-language format, but obviously still high quality production value, which is very, very important. And the favorite thing that I'm seeing right now is that we're able now to produce content, and we're able to have guests come on my shows, for example, who are from fan clubs, who are fans of teams, and they're all superb when it comes to their knowledge, their ability to speak on camera, and I really appreciate this. I think India is a fabulous example, as you say, of basically how you can be diverse and yet still produce a really high quality product.
And when it comes to presenting, when it comes to being on TV or being on screen, there are certain nuances that one takes care of apart from the knowledge and apart from the fact checking and all of those things. So how do you make sure that you look good and you always are there in that proper shape and proper frame of mind?
Well, you can't do too much about the hair going a little bit grayer and maybe putting a few pounds on or losing a bit of hair or something like that. But I think the important thing is that I still firmly believe that the people who switch on a TV show or whatever their form of content may be are looking to be entertained, are looking to be enlightened as well as being informed. And so therefore, I think you've got to make an effort to look good, to sound good, to be charismatic, to be dynamic. I think that's very important. And I think the minute you move away from that, then suddenly people will go, well, why should I bother watching that? I could just go to YouTube and watch some fan doing something, or I could even just listen to that guy in the coffee shop talking. So I think whatever you put out has to have that veneer, if you will, of glass, of quality. It's got to be premium if you can make it that way.
And that is a challenge again, right? When with a lot of content around, and if you don't be charismatic, if you're not able to hold the viewer, he has a lot of options, he assures.
And I think that's hugely important. And I think that's why, going back to what I said earlier on, I think I firmly believe that there is a place there for quality content, because having somebody just pop up in front of a screen and talk, that's a dime a dozen these days. There are so many people doing that. So you have to have, whether it's your credibility, whether it's your access to quality content, whether it's simply the charisma that you bring to it, you've got to have the competitive edge somehow. And you have to, I think, consistently produce a strong body of work. What I see nowadays quite often is people come and they decide to be sensational, swear a little bit, or be edgy or confrontational, but they burn out. Because after a while, the audience goes, yeah, I know that guy. That guy has one trick. Right. The one trick is to do that. So I think the harder thing to do is to consistently, over a period of years, retain support of an audience.
Right. And then, again, this is a question that I want to ask, because, whenever we start something, we take some time. It's like a test match. We just get into the groove and then we explode and we are at our ground, at our ease. So do you have certain kind of initial moments when you start a show, or you're too comfortable nowadays?
Never comfortable. I think the minute you get comfortable, you become a little bit lazy. So you've always got to have that little bit of nerves. You've got to have that little bit of an edge. I'm a huge believer in preparation and rehearsal. Huge believer in it. And I think what that means is you prepare your knowledge. We all have a certain bedrock of knowledge, but I think you research and you prepare specific to the broadcast. A lot of people go away, I think, and just read everything about everything. And that's actually self-defeating, because you get a bunch of useless stuff in your head. Prepare your knowledge specific to whatever it is that you're going to be broadcasting, which means you work hand in hand with the producer of the property. What would you want this product to look like? What would you like this show to look like? Learn what you need for that, so you have that inner confidence that you know your stuff, and then practice it. Now, I don't mean rehearse it to the point that what you do isn't spontaneous, but rehearse to an extent whereby you're confident that you know where you're going, you know what you're going to do. And then I think when that happens and you get that final count down to zero and you go live, then I think you just, your natural confidence and your natural assuredness takes over. And that's when you can have fun. And that's the best time, because, when you go live, that's my favorite time in the world is doing something live.
And also now with all the breaks coming into picture, you hear that countdown much often. So does it trouble you? You have to finish a sentence and suddenly there comes a count like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
Not for me, no. I've always worked in commercial television. Always. It's always been a reality. Now, I know that there are still viewers out there who go, but it interrupts the flow. It's a commercial reality. And if it's a commercial reality, what you have to do is you have to make sure that when you are on air, you maximize the value that you get out of it. And when you are going in and out of a break, you got to make sure that you go into that break with something that is compelling enough to make sure that the viewer comes back. And when you come back off that break, boom, you grab again. And I think that's a really important skill to have, to make sure that you produce continuity throughout the show, that you let people know earlier on what's coming up later on, and you don't let the breaks become a problem.
And you are fairly active on Twitter. You keep tweeting about all the different sports. I have seen you tweeting about UFC also last Sunday, so you keep catching up with a lot of sports.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of UFC actually. Yeah, I mean, I think at the moment, I've always been the way I grew up. I was always a cricket, football, rugby guy. It was just my background. It was the sports I watched. It was the sports I played, and so I've always been fond of it. But I've always been fond of athletics and other sports as well. But recently, I have, maybe it's because I like training. I like going to the gym and training, and where I train, I've got a couple of guys who are fighters, so I'm naturally quite attracted to that. But I like the branding. I like the characters. I like the staging, the presentation, the commentary around UFC. So that's like a little, not a guilty pleasure, but it's like what I watch for a bit of fun these days.
And you have been quite good at Hindi nowadays. Your promos are in Hindi.
My good friends at Sony Sports Network have made me sing in Hindi. They've made me dance to a Hindi song. Heaven knows what's coming next, but why not? Why not go for it?
You know, there's a big star called Shah Rukh Khan in India.
Yes.
And he has this dialogue. He says, "Bade bade deshon mein choti choti baatein hoti hain." So can you please say the dialogue?
I cannot say that right now. No, that's going to take a while. That's going to take a bit of learning.
Then let's do one thing. I'll say one dialogue in Telugu.
Okay.
Word by word.
Okay.
And you can repeat it.
I'll repeat it. Okay, go on.
Okay. There you go.
Telugu, right?
Not Telugu.
Okay.
This is another language that you're learning.
Yes, another good. Yeah, excellent.
So, Ivala.
Ivala,
Football. Sonyలో తప్పకుండా చూడండి.
Surely.
Well, today please watch football.
There you go. I can't put it all together. You can do that in post-production, okay?
Yeah. I can do it in post-production. Probably you can actually prepare some lines and you can also ask the viewers to read it.
You give me that and I'll put it on tonight, okay?
Right, there you go. It was so wonderful talking to
All
you,
right.
John.
Pleasure, Sandeep.
It's a short one because we are all on a busy schedule, but definitely this is surely one thing that our audience will be waiting to watch and get inspired. Thank you once again.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.